Good morning, everyone. My name's Gary Call. I am the head coach at KIN North America, and we are very excited to present to you the ins and the outs of our brand new color line, KINESSENCES Color. I'm joined today by Jesse Skittrell. Jesse is our technical director and has been working with the new color line for about 6 months. So between Jesse and Judy Lehman, our artistic director, there are two experts on the product performance and what it does. And I know for a fact that they've both fallen in love and really seen a level of performance and a level of technology different than they've seen any place else. So we're looking forward to hearing from them. I'm going to step back now and turn the time over to Jesse. He'll take the program and run with it, and I'll mute my mic. My responsibility is going to be answering questions and typing responses, making sure everybody is learning and getting the information that they need. So if you've got a question, type the question out and I'll go through them and answer them, and if it's something that needs to apply to the group, I'll jump in and we'll have redirect Jesse's conversation. And I'm probably the type that'll interrupt a couple times anyway. So look forward to having a great discussion of KINESSENCES technology and the new hair color that we're presenting to you today. So Jesse, the mic is yours.
Thank you, sir. So excited to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming and attending and taking time out of your day to do this. So good morning to our West Coasters and good afternoon to our East Coasters that are out there. We're thrilled to share this information with you. KINESSENCES is really on the cusp of some really new technology that's on the market. And without further ado, I just want to jump right into this information because we have a lot going on. First and foremost, one of the things that created this huge rush and wave, and the reason that KINESSENCES came about was really our guests in the salon. The guests or the client have been driving this, and they've been asking this for an extended period of time. We have an aging population. We're now pushing, and we're seeing popular prevention rather than cure. Our current lifestyles, we're seeing a decline in smoking and things that are really detrimental to our long-term health, as well as we're participating in healthier lifestyles, taking responsibility for environment and pollution. We're looking as a consumer group for customized products that really address our needs, simple and fast. Of course, technology is very important to us. Green and ethical culture, and of course, value for money is going to be vitally important. And that's really what our guests have been looking for. So it creates this social environment that we really had to create hair color around. And this, you'll see this throughout all of the industries that are out there. As we as a generation get a little bit older, every industry is going to be affected by these expectations. Right now, health and wellness is very impacted, and it's really pushing out to every industry that's out there. The next big industry, unfortunately, is going to be the afterlife industry as well, because there's the largest group of people right now in the baby booming group that are focusing on health and wellness and elongating their life. That's going to move to the next stage, but that affects every industry that we come in contact with, and that includes the cosmetic industry ourselves, the textile industry, tourism, and food industry as well. So the consumer health market has really multiplied by 3 in the last 3 years. So it's become vitally important that we're looking at what's in the product as well as where it's made and how it's made are going to be vitally important to it. And that's what we want to address at KINESSENCES. 7 out of 10 people claim to worry about keeping a healthy lifestyle and want to use a product that is as natural as possible to be able to provide those same or if not better results. So no longer do we have to give up results to be able to have a healthy lifestyle. We can actually get superior results by using a product that is as natural as humanly possible, and that would be KINESSENCES. So our first step was to launch our KINESSENCES shampoos, conditioners, and treatments, the KINESSENCE oil, the cream oil, which is by far my personal favorite product out of the whole family, and it revolutionized everything. I'm sure a lot of us in the salon used this, and we felt incredible hair come out of the head, as well as the mask was insanely incredible, and the retail sales that came on top of that. And that was kind of the first step and the first wave that created this wave of color as well. So what KIN did is they really went to every continent that's available and they pulled what are the significant factors that are creating a difference there. So you'll notice again and again and again we talk about oil-based technology. So I really quickly just wanted to talk about what those oils are. One, starting with the kukui nut, which is in the United States, that's derived from Hawaii. argan oil, which is from North Africa, usually known from Morocco, grapeseed oil, which is going to be known from Europe, as well as macadamia, which is usually Southeast Australia, New Zealand, as well as the camellia oil, which comes from Asia, and it derives the best from each continent and puts it into its best practice. So what are we really looking for, and what are we talking about? Active ingredients of a natural origin. And we're going to talk a little bit more later about what a natural origin is. You'll notice that we're not talking about organic here. We're talking about as natural as possible. Professional results and visible results. Being able to physically see that there is any of you that have used KINESSENCES thus far, you will notice there is a huge dynamic difference from staining of the skin to the quality of the hair afterwards, and it plays completely different than anything you've been used to on the market before. And of course, treating the hair gently and the environment gently as well. You'll probably begin to notice that we have a commitment to seeing KINESSENCES in magazines a lot, and you'll see it starting to hit the trades a little bit more. So just keep your eyeballs peeled for the look and just kind of celebrate a little bit that you're a KINESSENCE user inside of that.
We're going to be, Jess,
wellness.
We're going to be in
Yes,
Aesthetica magazine 3 times between July and October this year. So, as well as on the Aesthetica website. So we've got some stuff going on.
Yay. So, consumers are beginning to become aware of it as well. I know I've personally run into a couple fashion blogs, European fashion blogs that I work off of that have mentioned it. So it's beginning to get some traction out there, and it's quite exciting to see. So what is KINESSENCES all about? Health, obviously, we talked about that. Wellness. The big one that seems to be a barometer that's very important to people is sensitivity. I don't know about you guys, but standing behind the chair as a hairdresser in a salon that has 16 people built into it, we see anywhere from 60 to 80 clients a day and somewhere around 1,200 clients a month. The sensitivity rate to hair color is at an all-time high, and it's not getting less, it's getting more. And KINESSENCES wanted to make sure and address that, and we're going to talk about how we address that, as well as harmony within the line, not having to have a lot of things going on. It's beautiful. It creates perfect hair, and the aromatherapy really feeds the mind, body, and soul, and we're going to expand on what each one of those is. So starting off with, the new coloring philosophy is a free philosophy, and what we mean by that is KINESSENCES is an ammonia-free and PPD-free hair color line that dramatically decreases that sensitivity exponentially by being able to eliminate those 2 ingredients right there. As well as, you'll notice it's a nice, tight, compact line, so it's environmentally friendly, so we don't have to have 2 or 3 separate lines in order to address the need in the salon. We have exactly what we need in our cabinet every single time. So some of the things that are important is typically when we're looking at durability of color, we usually have a permanent color, semi-permanents, demi-permanents, and temporary hair color dyes. Most permanent hair color and some semi-permanents use oxidative dyes, and we know that semi-permanent hair colors and temporaries typically use more direct dyes. We're able to address that all in one category system. This is just a great little cross-section of what it looks like when you take a hair fiber and you cross-section it, and you can see how the hair color has actually penetrated all the way to the medulla. It's a permanent hair color, so it gives you that maximum oxidation, versus semi-permanent isn't going to penetrate all the way, and then temporary is going to sit a little bit further, even on the exterior of the hair. One of the things that I'd love to point out is, it's to important people, we teach why. To unimportant people, we teach how. So I appreciate working with Kin for this express reason, because they teach why something is before they teach how something works. And understanding where you've been is vitally important to understanding where you're going to go and what the thought process is here. So this is kind of a visual timeline of hair color, beginning in the 20th century with first permanent hair coloring. Somewhere around the 20s is when Kin was able to be found. So we are a family-owned Spanish hair color company that's been around for over 85 years. It's owned by the Basacoma family in Spain, in eastern Spain as well. It has one manufacturing plant that manufactures everything. There's no filling, outsourcing that's done outside of the plant. And that started in the 1920s with the first Kin products. About we used ammonia for an extended period of time, and that was the height of liquid hair color, gel hair color launching really rapidly, and then cream hair color came to the United States. And then in the mid to late 80s, we found an ammonia replacement that was called monoethanolamine. And the reason ammonia needed to be replaced was because ammonia comes out of the tube very alkaline. It has a very harsh fragrance to it, and that's the gas that you're smelling gas off very quickly. And what happens is it breaks down over a period of time and becomes acidic. Well, that ammonia irritation to the scalp is very harsh, as well as that big shock factor to lifting the cuticle like that very harshly dried out the hair. So we knew really quickly that we had to find some sort of a replacement. I call it an evolution, not a revolution, because it took quite a while for monoethanolamine until about 2010 to actually become a stable source for us and figure out how to make that work. In the 1990s, we began to see the evolution of semi-permanent hair color, as well as demi-permanent hair color, and deposit-only systems became very important to us. And we saw a lot of those launch on the markets and created those separate categories. And now we ended up with 2 hair color lines in the salon, one that was permanent and one that was demi-permanent, and sometimes even semi and temporary. So we'd have up to 4 categories. In 2010 was when the first permanent hair color first permanent coloring ammonia-free came onto the market was in 2010, and it really we're on about the 4th generation. We really feel like KINESSENCES is about the 4th generation of perfected ammonia-free hair color, and how that is completely different. So why is KINESSENCES different? So I want to displace a few pieces of information here. One of the reasons that KINESSENCES is so successful is they've been able to remove the PPD. So there's 2 types of color bases that you can typically use. There's PPD, paraphenylene diamine dye, and PTD, which is paraffin toluene diamine dye. And PPD was found in 1975 by the European Cosmetic Commission to have a massive irritation to the skin and to the scalp. We've known for an extended period of time that this can be an irritant, and as well as an irritant to the body on a global scale, where we can create anaphylaxis. If the body all of a sudden decides that it can't tolerate PPD, it will go into anaphylaxis shock. And we've seen a growing influx of sensitivity to that. PPD has typically been used in very dark colors, so those clients that color their hair that are 80–90% gray and they're coloring at levels 2, 3, and 4 are probably going to be the ones that have the most sensitivity to those types of things because they have the most exposure the fastest. And what happens with traditional ammoniated color is you have to put in 3 times the amount of PPD, or actual color component, to be able to have the hair uptake, because about 75% of it just simply rinses off and doesn't bind with the fibers of the hair shaft. And PTD is a distant cousin, and it has less sensitivity to it. It still has some sensitivity, but it has less sensitivity to it versus PPD, so PTD automatically wins. What happened is recently is the European Cosmetic Commission, which they would be congruent to our FDA here in the United States or Health Canada, has stated, and they're one of the hardest cosmetic commissions to work with globally, has stated by the year 2018 the PPD and PTD concentrations in hair color have to be under 2% in concentration. In a lot of hair color, PPD and PTD can be as high as 12 to 15%. So you have a much higher component built into it. Because of the unique composition that we're going to talk about in a second of KINESSENCES, they were able to completely eliminate PPD and use only PTD and be well under 0.1% of the color is actually PTD. So we're already in congruence with the European Cosmetic Commission. So immediately what begins to happen is the sensitivity factor goes down exponentially. Unfortunately, the European Cosmetic Commission also said that PPD and PTD, there's no known substance that can create a similar effect that has less irritation to the scalp. But they have also stated that they find that it's not a carcinogenic substance as well. So they've come out and publicly said that, and that's one of the hardest unions to get through. So know that you're going to have exponentially less sensitivity to KINESSENCES as you would to traditional hair color as well. Secondarily, that takes us into the use of MEA. I'm going to skip the hair structure for just a second and come back to that. The use of MEA, or monoethanolamine, is a secondary alkalizer, and up till this point in about 2010, it wasn't very stable. In order to get monoethanolamine to do the same thing that ammonia would do in hair color, you traditionally had to put in about 10 times the amount of monoethanolamine than you would have in ammonia, which created this massive chemical exposure for the guest, and then made it spike exponentially with alkalinity. The difference between ammonia and monoethanolamine is the fact that ammonia comes out alkaline and progressively becomes acidic. MEA comes out alkaline and stays alkaline over the duration of the service. So it's vitally important that you stop the activity of the monoethanolamine that's built into it. Where KINESSENCES has been different, it's because of the addition of the oils, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, has made the monoethanolamine much more stable, because MEA is a gelatinous type substance. So if you think of molasses, it's very molasses-like. So it has a harder time penetrating the hair fiber. The oil helps it to do that, so you can bring down the concentration of monoethanolamine, or the secondary alkalizer, in the hair shaft exponentially. So you have a congruent amount of alkalizer that you would have in ammonia, if not less. I think it's 0.8% of the whole tube is actually going to be your secondary alkalizer. So you're getting exponentially less exposure to the alkalizer as well. We have to have an alkalizer to swell the hair shaft to allow the color to come into the hair shaft. So that takes me into a conversation real quick about the new findings that have happened with the hair structure. And if you've tuned out, this is where you really want to tune back in, because this dramatically alters all hair color games, not just the KINESSENCES game as well. So one of the things that's happened, you can see the diagram of hair there. We've all learned in cosmetology school, there's cuticle, cortex, and medulla. Yay, that's a beautiful thing. The cuticle protects the exterior of the hair, and it's translucent in fiber, exposing the cortex. The cortex is where all the fiber is at and the strength of the hair, as well as where the melanin is at, and the medulla is the hair's core. There's a couple of pieces that are missing from it right there, and you'll see one called the hyaline layer and the Huxley's layer, and then the Henley's layer. Those are the doctors that actually, the cosmetic chemists, excuse me, that found this. They're also known as the endocuticle and the endocortex, and the endomedulla would be the other part as well. And what those are barriers between the cuticle and the cortex. And what we used to believe was that the hair, being a protein substance, was hydrolyphic, meaning that it pulled water towards it and that it was water loving. And what we have found is that that's not necessarily true. Up until the endocuticle, the hair is hydrolyphic, so it is water-loving at that point. Past the endocuticle, the hair is hydrophobic. It actually pushes water away from it, and it's lipophilic, meaning lipid, meaning oil, and philic, meaning liking. So it pulls oil towards it, so it organically wicks oil. That's why you've noticed all the oils that have come on the market exponentially that have had huge success. That's why oil is so successful, because the hair can organically, depending upon the molecular weight, wick the oil into the cortex of the hair, and we can get a better hair fiber over an extended period of time. And I think it's vitally important that you understand, because of the oil use that's used in the KINESSENCES, which is an oil delivery system, it organically wicks the oil into the hair structure itself without having to expand the hair fiber. So the MEA becomes a secondary piece to the whole situation. So you're able to get a much lower monoethanolamine, and it encapsulates, the oil actually encapsulates the PPD, or excuse me, the PTD in the hair, and drags it into the cortex of the hair, allowing it to couple and become caught in the hair structure itself. So I don't have to put in all of that extra hair color that's going to rinse down the drain. I only have to put in exactly what's there. So the first thing that you're going to notice with an oil delivery system such as KINESSENCES is there's much more opaqueness to the color, because the color is in the hair rather than on the cuticle. So when it's wet, you may feel like it's a little bit shallow because you're looking through the cuticle into the cortex, and once it's dry, it becomes very opaque at that point. And because of the oil delivery, you now have an oil that sits on the cuticle You have an oil that sits where the lipophilic layer is on the endocuticle and prevents that hair color from aging or fading out of the hair, as well as you have a smaller molecular weight that works on the cortex of the hair and really locks in the fiber of the hair. And my personal favorite, it doesn't stain the skin like crazy. So you're going to notice a exponential, huge difference to the durability of the hair because we're not doing so much damage going through. And what you'll notice after about 3 or 4 applications is the lipophilic layer, or the moisture content of the hair, is going to be much better because the oil factor is retaining and retaining the water into the structure of the hair as well. So huge findings, huge findings. We're not having to blow hair apart anymore to put hair color in. We can actually wick it using oil and a small alkalizer, and we have way less exposure to concentrations of color as well. So we
What
talked
happens
about
at the end is your hair ends up much more healthy.
I
So,
mean, bottom line.
so personally, flat hair has been my result.
Yeah, the one drawback, if I had to say there was one, those of us that have used hair color in the past to create texture to the hair because we had ammonia that swelled the hair, that doesn't happen anymore. So if anything, you're going to have too healthy of hair. Darn it, sell more styling products. What a
There you
problem to
go.
have. So when we talk about the cosmetic base, we talked about being PPD free, we talked about being ammonia free and using monoethanolamine, and then the third piece is the oxidizing agent as well. Um, it's important right now to our current market that we get into ammonia-free hair color. Our clients are dictating this at this point. What's interesting about this experience versus having some other experiences is the smell, the ingredient deck. So here's just kind of a comparison between traditional hair color and KINESSENCES hair color. Traditional hair color uses PPD. We use a combination of PTD and a much lower concentration of the base dye, so you're not exposing the hair. Traditional hair color uses ammonia. We use a secondary alkalizer of monoethanolamine, again, much lower. We've eliminated the silicones out of the hair with the petroleum base, and we've gone with a natural extra protective emollient active 5 oils built into the hair. No more paraffins or mineral oils used in the hair. We're actually using natural based oils. It's preservative free, and for our hydration, we've gone from an alcohol based hydrator to a glycerin based hydrator, which leaves the hair in exponentially better shape. So what you're able to say with your guest, because now that naturalness is expected, we're able to say that we are almost 90% natural. And what does natural mean? Natural means that the ingredients, such as the essential oils and flowers, are derived from nature, and they're combined with carrier agents, preservatives, surfactants, humectants, and emulsifiers, and they are produced without using chemical synthetic substances, and that leaves the integrity of the initial ingredient, because you can process the heck out of it and make it into something completely different. We've done everything in our power to be able to leave it in as natural of a state as possible, but also keeping it in a stable situation. So some of the active oils that we have, argan oil, which is it basically uses vitamin E oil, and from a natural source. It's going to keep the hair much more hydrated, has a larger molecular weight. Macadamia nut oil is closest to the amino acids that we naturally produce in our hair, so it's going to sit a little further into the cortex. This is one of the pieces that actually draws hair color into the hair shaft. Kukui nut oil has a very strong antioxidant as well as vitamin E to it. Very important that we eliminate the possibility of oxidation. So that's what kukui nut oil does, as well as camellia oil has the A, B, D, and E built into it that really pushes it, and it's very rich in amino acids and pushes it closer to the cortex of the hair, as well as grapeseed oil, which is a very strong active ingredient in omega-6, and this is part of what keeps the hair pliable and prevent breakage. The last ingredient, which is oleic acid, is derived from olive oil, and this really helps to provide protection during the service from the hair and the scalp, so you don't have the irritation that you would typically see in the past, as well as it creates a surface tension on the top of the hair that prevents the color from aging back out of the hair and helps to reproduce the lipophilic layer in the endocuticle. The last piece that I love to talk about is beeswax. Beeswax in the developers are vitally important. You're going to notice our developers are a little bit different. They're based on the 12. So we have 6, 12, 24, and 36 volume developers. And we use beeswax, and beeswax has gotten a bad rap over the last few years. And it's really not true. It's an emollient base that nourishes the skin and softens the hair and the fiber, has an antioxidant value that's quite high, that prevents color from aging, but it's also been created by animals for their coats and their skin and their feathers to prevent water loss. So it's vitally important that we actually have beeswax. One of the reasons I get excited about it is I can now mix the KINESSENCES developers with my Kin Blonde lightning powder and create a balayage bleach that doesn't swell and has the perfect consistency for exactly what I need it to stick on the hair right there.
The beeswax gives a hydrophobic component to the lightener. So when you mix it with the lightener the way Jesse suggested, it allows the lightener to dry so that it performs like a clay-based bleach.
Without having to have more inventory. I mean, to me, that's vitally important. I don't know about you guys, but my color bar gets overstocked really quickly. And then last but not least is this beautiful long name, blah, 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 that I'm not even going to try to say. It's an emollient factor that has a very, very strong UV ray absorber. So we have several pieces in the line that help to prevent antioxidants and antioxidation. This actually absorbs, so it helps prevent the color from actually dehydrating out of the hair, and it protects the lipid layer so it doesn't dry off. So if you've ever used an oil on the hair and after a period of time it feels like it's just evaporated out of the hair, this specific ingredient prevents that from happening and also brightens the hair color at the same time. So we have the 5 different oils that are built into it. Each one has a little bit of a different molecular weight, and you can see almost listed there exactly how they would sit. So argan oil would be a little bit more topical, macadamia nut oil would be a little bit more in the endocuticle, kukui nut oil would be in the cortex of the hair, camellia and grapeseed would be even closer to the medulla, and leaving the hair in incredible shape, and those are the pieces that wick into the hair fiber. And then what happens is, because they encapsulate the artificial pigment that's in the hair shaft and they wick it into the hair fiber rather than having to alkalize it so much into the hair fiber, once they begin to be mixed with an oxidizer such as hydrogen peroxide, the developer, they expand and become trapped in the hair, and they separate themselves from the oil, leaving the oil component behind and allowing the color to be delivered into the interior structure of the hair. For lack of a better word, wicking into the hair or injecting it into the hair. And then that combines into one large structure in the hair shaft and becomes trapped, giving you that incredible, incredible durability into the hair shaft and maximum reflection, and leaves the hair in a very healthy, protected state without the influence of UV rays and without the irritation going on to the scalp. So with that being said, that's a lot of information to take in. Did you want to add anything to that, Gary?
No, I think we're doing awesome. The big thing to remember is that the oil delivery system, in combination with lack of ammonia, helps condition and maintain the quality of the hair. We've talked about MEA as an alkalizer, and traditionally MEA is an alkalizer for semi-permanent color systems. There are some semi-permanent color systems that do a great job of creating a dry texture to the hair, and that dry texture is a result of MEA. That gets completely offset in KINESSENCES because of the natural oils and the low amount of MEA that's part of the formula. Then Jess will talk about rinsing in a minute. That makes a huge difference. But let's look at some color performance and see how they compare.
So the vital thing to me is when I'm working with hair color manufacturers, put your money where your mouth is. Show me what you got. We can claim that it doesn't fade. We can claim that it doesn't age till we're blue in the face until you actually prove it. So of course, Kin, having their own laboratory, made sure and did that. So what they did is they took 3 wicks, and the reason the wick is used is because it's probably the best cross-section of fiber, because if we think of hair as fiber, cotton, silk, corduroy, cotton fiber, wick fiber is probably the closest that you're going to get to kind of that middle of the road default texture. And so they took 3 wick shades, and they used KINESSENCES and 2 different competitors' colors, and they processed them on the wick to make sure that they had a complete process. And then they used a
Spectro.
spectrophotometer.
Oh,
Sorry, my brain can't process that. And it's actually a measurement tool that measures the light wave that is reflected back from the pigment substances. That'll let you know how much of the pigment has stayed in the hair or aged in the hair. They did 8 washes, and they used the Kin Cream Prestige Equilibrium shampoo. If you're not familiar with that, that's our piece that really brings down the pH of the hair as well. That's what I would follow all of my hair color with, that adjusts the hair fiber into the perfect pH of 4.5 to 5.5. And then they reread it again with a spectrophotometer as well. So here's a great visual. They use 6.66, which is a level 6, a very intense red from each manufacturer. And you'll notice that KINESSENCES with a spectrophotometer, my brain can't process that, was at zero loss. And we had 4.5% loss and 11.49% loss on the spectrophotometer from the competitors as well. This measures the yellow age or fade out of it, because we know that primarily the red is the piece that's going to fade out. The yellow is also the piece that gives it its brightness, especially when we're talking about red hair color. It's the yellow reflection back that gives us that intensity that we're looking for. And you can see that we only lost 9% at 6.66, and the competitor at the most lost 22%. That's a pretty big difference between vibrancy. I mean, your vibrancy is going to go down exponentially there. And then the last study they did was the same wicking material, but done with 5.0, so a 5N. So you'll notice the KINESSENCES color loss was under 1%. It was 0.12% loss, versus the highest competitor was 9% in loss, which is still a pretty strong color loss. So the money is where the mouth is. You can't lie to a spectrophotometer, and this was done under a lab situation to really prove what's there. And then last but not least, what's the part that makes me so excited is the fragrance. Most people don't understand when you manufacture hair color, one of the reasons they put whatever fragrance they put in is more about masking the nasty ammonia smell or the base smell than anything else. Well, because we don't have ammonia as a precursor to this, we have a secondary alkalizer, monoethanolamine. We can play with what fragrances that we want and work in tandem with the oils that are currently there. So to me, this speaks to the fact that we were able to bring in a fragrance composer to be able to put in some floral notes. So when you actually use the product, you're going to have a positive aromatherapeutic experience. It's going to have some notes of mandarin, lemon, cords of lime, eucalyptus, lavender, and it's got a little bit of a light woodsy touch to it. And patchouli, a little bit of patchouli, and a very woody fragrance to it without being overly obnoxious, which then takes the whole experience of having to have your hair colored from being one that you suffer through to being one that you almost look forward to and enjoy and relax a little bit with. It's very exciting. So just in conclusion, 90% natural ingredients, PPD-free, high-intensity molecules, ammonia-free that covers 100% of gray, free of any artificial additions such as silicones, paraffin, mineral oil, parabens, formaldehyde, and alcohol. We've used, we call them the 5 ancient oils that are built into it that are in a natural state. Each one has a different molecular weight, and everything that provides an active emollient film that acts before processing, during processing, and after the color application. If you were to add oil to your color application, a lot of times it's only going to help you in the processing time and possibly afterwards. This actually provides an emollient film on the skin beforehand. Vibrant, long-lasting, healthy results. So let's kind of take a look at what's included in the line. So you'll notice first and foremost that there's 4 different developers, a 6 volume, 12 volume, 24, and 36. So 6 volume is really designed to be mixed in a 2-to-1 ratio with your color to create more of a semi-permanent situation. 12 volume can be used to create a demi-permanent situation. 24 volume is going to give you 1 to 2 levels of lift, and that's where your ideal gray coverage comes into place. And 36 volume is going to be up to 3 levels of lift. Possibly if you're using a level 10 on fine hair, you might experience 4, but really highly unlikely that you're going to have that. But 80% of the color work that we do within the salon when we're doing permanent hair color lives between 1 and 3 levels from where the guest is currently sitting. And we've all learned, if we've done hair color for an extended period of time, the closer we keep the client's colored hair to their natural level, the better the durability is going to be.
One of
What
the
this
things,
means,
one of the things to
go ahead.
remember about working with KINESSENCE is the idea is healthy, healthy, healthy. So within this color correction, we don't have high lifts. We don't have extreme lightening. There are some level 10 shades that have rich tonality and can be used to tone hair that's been bleached in a previous process. But we don't expect to be pushing for as much lift as possible. Hence, the strongest developer is 36 volume. Because in order to be stronger, we would have to raise the level of MEA in the hair. And again, we're trying to be as gentle, as kind as we can be.
Exactly. The fun part about this is with oil delivery system in the KINESSENCEs, we're able to really have one tube of hair color that does 3 categories. So by mixing it in a 2-to-1 ratio with a 6 volume, you're able to create that semi-permanent. 2-to-1 with a 12 volume, you're able to create that demi-permanent. And then you can move into your 24 and 36 for gray coverage and any form of lifting that you're going to be doing, leaving the hair in incredible, incredible shape. But it eliminates, and it's also environmentally responsible because we have less packaging and less SKUs that we have to carry in the salon. And then last but not least is our shampoo equilibriant. This is going to restructure the hair fiber, restoring the natural pH to the hair and really drop it down. One of the things that I can't stress enough that's vitally important when you're using a secondary alkalizer such as monoethanolamine is when you rinse the hair. You want to rinse the hair. First of all, the old adage of color removes color, we all understand how that works. Emulsify it a little bit before you actually go to rinse it off. You're going to notice the staining to the skin is minimal, if at all, and you're going to use a whole heck of a lot less color remover. So Eddie Munster doesn't leave your salon anymore. Secondarily, when you rinse, you're going to want to use a fair amount of pressure, and you're going to want to use the hottest water the client can stand, because I need to absorb enough water into the hair to push it out. Remember, oil and water don't mix. So I need to be able to physically push it out with heat and with pressure out of the hair. And you want to rinse till the water runs clear. So the thing to understand here is when you're rinsing the hair, you're going to notice that very, very little actual pigment comes off of the hair because 90% of the color is actually absorbed into the hair fiber. Whereas before, you'd actually have water that would run off brown or red or whatever the situation may be. You're not going to have that in this situation. So you're going to see this white, milky film that comes off, which is the oil floating in the hair color. So you want to make sure you rinse that really, really well until the hair feels like it's in a slick, smooth situation. If you don't, and you go and shampoo the hair before you've actually rinsed it completely and thoroughly out of the head, and what I mean by that is a good 3 to 5 minutes with the hottest water and the highest pressure they can stand. I would even turn the water off, do a few manipulations on the scalp, and rinse a second time. You're going to notice better quality of hair, but if you don't, and there's still a little MEA left in the hair, when you go to shampoo it, it re-gelatinizes and it will leave the hair looking and feeling flat. So you want to make sure you shampoo it out of the hair, and that's when things begin to go south a little bit, is you want to make sure that you've really, really rinse it very, very well. And I find a lot of hairdressers try to cut corners a little bit, and that's one of those areas that you really can't do that with. And shampoo equilibrium is your lifesaver in that situation. So again, it's mixed in a 1-to-1 ratio, and your processing time is going to be 35 minutes. If you're doing demi-permanent color with 6 volume or 12 volume, you're going to want to process 20 minutes. Here's an interesting part, and this is again maximizing you as the artist. You do not have to calculate for gray coverage. Let me repeat. You do not have to calculate for gray coverage until that guest is 70% gray or more. Most hair color lines at about 20 to 30% gray exposure, they want you to start adding neutral to your formula. What that does is it allows you to use your palette a little bit more fully. So you're really creating as a color artist, not just painting a wall with some brown. So once they hit that 70% gray spot, that's when you start putting in about half of your formula is going to be your background or your neutral tone, and the rest is going to be your reflective tone. You're going to get a much broader palette, and you're going to be known for a much more tonal direction, which is very exciting. I don't know about you guys. You know, our gray coverage in the salon is usually about a 50-50, maybe a 60-40 split. Very rarely are we doing, once a client gets 70% gray, usually they're either embracing their gray at that point or there's a small handful of them. It's more often than not, we're not doing 70% gray or more working in the salon. This gives you a visual of all the color choices. There's four categories: the naturals, ashes, goldens, browns, and coppers, and reds. Excuse me, five categories. And you're going to notice that there's only exactly the colors that you need here. So there's not a huge amount of colors. There's 64, I believe, colors, 64, 65 colors built into it. But it seems to be the perfect amount of colors to do exactly what you need to be able to do in the salon. I don't know about you guys, as a salon owner, having to count 100 and some odd tubes of hair color every week makes my head want to explode when I know that we're really only using a third of the actual hair colors there. So this is the perfect amount of hair color categories to be there. So here's some visuals, some befores and afters. This was done at our VIP event here in January in Long Beach, California. This is kind of the preview. Some of you may have actually seen this. This lovely young lady was in the S category, so she was already naturally in that blonde category that was going darker. She had pretty fine hair, but a lot of it. So we used 10.12, which is a level 10 blue violet with 24 volume on the regrowth. And then I used 10.1 with 36 volume on the mid-lengths and ends. And just across her part line, we put some highlights of Kin Blonde with 6 volume because she's already in a light category. And you can see the finished result. So beautiful lift. She was pretty thrilled at this point. Loved being blonde over some old highlights that were there. This is a great situation of cross-mixing the colors, and really one of the things that you're going to find really quickly is repigmentizing. I don't want to say you don't have to. In extreme situations, you're going to need to repigmentize. But because of the opaqueness and the uptake of color, you can get opaque color on old highlights very beautifully without having to take extreme measures. This was 2 parts of 6.43, which is a copper gold, and 1 part of a 6.67, which is a red, has a slight violet background to it. It's mainly copper gold. 12 volume at the scalp and 36 volume on the mid-lengths and ends. Processed it all together. Bada bing, bada boom. When she comes back in for a retouch, we would continue with the same retouch of the scalp. Probably would take that same formula if we had age or fade on the ends. And one of the things you'll notice about the color is that if it's going to age, it's going to age up the chart, not off the chart. So that hair color will stay in the same family. If she has sun exposure, she's not going to become a brassy redhead. She's going to be in that same family. I would take the same color and mix 2 parts of 6 volume and refresh that mid-lengths and ends if it becomes necessary. If she has a lot of color loss, say she went to Hawaii for 2 months and sat in the sun all the time, you could do 2 parts of 12 volume and get a little more deposition of color. And then this is a great example of a true demi-permanent hair color. We took 4.51, which is a level 4 mahogany, which is just a beautiful, rich, warm brown, and a slight ash behind it, just to give it that little bit of sable, minky finish to it. And 2 parts, 12 volume, and we applied that scalp to ends. And then we also applied 7.19 in her highlights, which is a level 7. It's a blue base, and it has a blue-violet background to it. And we use 36 volume in packets and then put the color around it. And you can see those soft little kisses of caramel coming through the mid-lengths and ends, just to give you an idea of how well the deposition of color worked in one quick shot. Of course, sending our guest home with the supporting pieces as well, the KINESSENCES shampoo, the mask, the oil, and the oil cream is, of course, going to keep everything in a happy, healthy, shining space, and as well as elongate the experience because the fragrance notes are the same from one to the next. The camellia, especially, is very strong in this one. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible experience. Mr. Gary, did you have any final comments that you wanted to make?
Yeah, now's a great time for any questions anybody has. If you have questions that you'd like to pose, we'll go back and answer them as quickly as we can. One question from Susan is, how is KINESSENCE for highlighting over? I was just in the middle of typing. In our experience, we've been able to get through it very easily with Kin Blonde mixed with 10 or 20 volume developer, as well as with a lighter shade of KINESSENCE. It tends to lift over itself pretty well, not completely predictably, but pretty easy. Part of that has to do with the oil. The oil delivery system helps you remove the color easily just as much.
Correct.
It helps you get the color in.
Excellent.
Can I get the technical info via email, please? Yes, I'll be emailing everyone a link to the webinar as well as the 4 handouts that we've included. I've been adding to the handouts based on your request. The handouts now include the promo sheet and also the complete price list and order form for all of KINESSENCES, so you see the list of every shade that's available and what's going on there. Thank you, Adelson. Great job, Jesse. We appreciate it. So, that's great. Any other comments from anybody or questions that we can help you with?
I'm going to throw one last thing in there while we're talking. The addition of the oils as well allows us to be less mineral reactive. So you'll notice if you're in a hard water area, you don't get that fade or age that you would typically get over the top of mineralized hard water, and as well as that violent reaction.
Well, great. I want to thank Jesse for being with us today, and thank all of you for attending. As always, join us on Twitter at Kin North America, Facebook at Kin North America, Instagram at Kin North America, and check out our website at kincosmetics.com. So thank you for being with us.